Okay, who's up?
Coach, just your thoughts on the current quarterback situation. Do you anticipate on seeing both Skyler and Alex play this Saturday against Texas?
Well, I would anticipate that both of them would. I think both of them played, reasonably well in the course of the ball game at West Virginia. I think, it wasn't that. I mean, to go from one to the other wasn't because necessarily that Skyler was playing bad. I mean, we didn't have a touchdown on the board. We needed to make some type of a change, but that certainly wasn't Skyler's fault. It was just a collective number of things. So anyway, the question being about the quarterbacks, we'll see who gets to start, but I would anticipate, as always, that both of them will be on the field, contribute.
Coach, 2 years ago, K-State started at 2-2 following a loss at West Virginia and turned around and won 7 of the next 9 games. So finding success after a loss to the Mountaineers can be done. I'm curious how you feel about this 2018 team going forward.
Well, I think, every day is a new day, and, the thoughts and feelings change from day to day, and they're always reactive, depending on, how your players are, how they're doing, what their response is day to day, what their effort happens to be during the course of a practice. We had a good practice yesterday, and yet last week we had a good Monday practice and practiced poorly on Tuesday and Wednesday, and so today becomes a very critical day. And right now, based on yesterday's work, I feel pretty good about that. Tomorrow, it kind of depends on what happens today. So, it's not a team yet with an identity, if that's part of the question. So that remains to be seen. But it's as always, nothing's changed in that respect. It's I'm looking for improvement in all aspects of the game and every phase of it, and you see some of it, and you see some of it that maybe occurs and then disappears, which happened to us. We'd been good. I mean, I'm going in different directions here, but penalties came back to get us, and we kind of thought we had really eliminated that. Not totally eliminated them, but really reduced the number, and consequently enhanced our discipline and focus. We thought drop passes were, we had gotten through that, and then that popped up again in the course of the ball game, and on and on like that. So, the consistency is not there for sure. So we need to improve. We need to get to a point where we're consistently improving.
Another quarterback question. This one is on Texas quarterback Sam Ehlinger. He appeared downright unstoppable most of the game against you guys last year. And watching him on videotape, what impresses you the most about him?
Well, I think that he's just a well-rounded quarterback that can do a lot of things. He's very athletic. He can throw the ball, and they'll throw the ball short, and but they'll put the ball downfield. They'll take their shots, depending on how well they're doing in the course of a ball game. But and we'll initiate them in situations where most people probably would not, so that keeps you on your toes as well. And his ability, his athletic ability is good. He's a big physical guy who can run. The quarterback run game hurt us last year. His scrambles, hurt us. Draw hurt us. Quarterback draw. So he has, so he's versatile, enough to impact all phases of the game. He can throw it and run it, and obviously he's beginning to manage the game quite well too.
Coach, when you see an offense struggling to get in the end zone like yours has, how much do you personally intervene with the offensive coaching staff and kind of put your hands on it and say, I'd love it if you guys would try this or that compared to what you've been doing?
Well, I think we constantly have dialogue about that. I mean, the fact that we're not getting it in the end zone, I don't, I don't fault anybody in particular. I don't fault our coaches, and and I, in all reality, don't really fault our players. I mean, everybody has improvement to make. And it starts with me, and I do, and our coaching staff does, and our players do. We've all got to get better at what we're doing. This is an offensive staff that's basically. When you consider the assignments of each, it's different, and so they're growing together. That part of it, I think, is improving. That hasn't shown up with points on the board, but nevertheless, I see that improving. But it's getting acclimated to it and continue to make the improvement. So, and my interaction with it hasn't changed from day one.
Coach, after the game, Skyler told us he was surprised that he got taken out in the third quarter. What kind of conversations have you had with him in that regard since then?
Well, is what I shared with him all yesterday is, it wasn't, Skyler wasn't playing any worse than anybody else. I mean, he was doing okay. It wasn't his fault that we're behind the 8 ball. The point was, we didn't have any points on the board, and we just needed to do something, and needed to make some type of change. And the other young guy has been, playing equally as well. Both of them have been playing well for the most part. Each of them have their hiccups and their issues, but. Skyler had played well. We just needed to try to do something to get, to get a spark, to get some points on the board.
You said after the game that you can't coach a team that can't gain 6 inches. Was that meant as a challenge?
Well, no, I think sometimes I'd have to go back and hear it. I said after the ball game, I said, if I recall correctly, I said, I take the responsibility for that. But I'd do it again, and I'd do it in a heartbeat. And I told the players in the locker room, if the same situation rises next week, I'll do the same thing, exactly. And I shared with them why. Is because I have great confidence in their capabilities to, perform at the level it takes in order to, get those kind of first downs. It didn't happen, and there's some reasons behind that, but nevertheless, it wasn't that I couldn't coach them. If I felt that we were a team that couldn't gain 6 inches, then maybe I wouldn't be coaching very long. That goes without saying, probably. But I didn't mean that that this was a team that couldn't gain 6 inches, and therefore I wasn't trying to challenge anybody. I was just saying that I have confidence in their ability to do that, and therefore I would make that call. And I'm pretty sure I said that in the press conference. I'd do it again, or I think I did. I don't know.
Coach, the offense right now is struggling, obviously. The defense is kind of ill-defined at what they're going to be their strength, and special teams have been good, but maybe not as game-changing as in the past. But yet you're 2-2. You've only played one conference game. It was on the road and you lost, but that's not atypical of what you've seen the last few years. How is this team the same as the ones that have rallied to finish strong the last few seasons, and how is this team a little bit different than those?
Well, good question. I was just visiting with our coaches a little bit ago, and I don't know right now. Like I said, we haven't really established an identity. I don't know if I could, answer the question what the difference is. I think we'll find out rather quickly if talking or thinking about Scott's evaluation of last year and where we went after a 2-2 start. So we'll have something to compare it with, quite obviously, when we get through the next few ball games. But I see you know, I was visiting with our coaches and watching tape of last year's ball game, watching with Texas, and watching our offense. You know, and the offense, same people. And you know, you go back and you look. I mean, it's a close ball game. We lose ball game on a penalty in a second overtime. So offensively, you know, they did all right. I mean, they played reasonably well against a good Texas defensive football team. And as I said, it's the same people. You know, you look at position by position. You know, we don't have Demo, we don't have Pringle, don't have Valentine. Everybody else is exactly the same. Exactly. And so there, to me, there isn't any reason why we shouldn't be a better team from an offensive standpoint, being able to score as readily as we did in that ball game, to move the ball, you know, enough to, you know, score 40 points or so, whatever the number was. It hasn't happened, you know, so I'm not, you know, just not totally certain what, you know, there are all these things that need to be corrected, and as I said before, I'm being redundant, I know that, but you know, we identify the problems, we work hard at trying to get them corrected, the players work hard at trying to get them corrected, we get them corrected, and it doesn't remain consistent, and they pop back up again. So it's developing, as I said, that consistency at being able to, you know, improve the very improvable mistakes. I mean, that's coach talk, I guess, but nevertheless, they are so correctable. And I look at, you ask about the defense and special teams as well. I think defensively, you know, we're going through some growing pains, but nevertheless, you know, it wasn't, I mean, they had, in all reality, they had 7 points on one big play in the first half of the ball game. You know, basically, that's the way it could have played out very easily. So, you know, they were doing some very good things. So it tells me that there is a capability of being able to do that, even though, you know, we're altering positions and banged up a little bit in that respect. In special teams, we've been okay, but we haven't, I agree with you, we haven't excelled quite like we should, and particularly in our return game. You know, I think our kickoff cover game has been pretty good. Our punt game picked up a little bit as far as hitting the ball last week. I mean, a youngster got the ball up down there. We had a 65-yard punt that we killed on the 4 or 5 yard line down there. That's a major play in a ball game that dramatically impacts the field position, unlike the very first kick of the ball game where we hit it 33 yards and give them a very short field to work with. But the cover units, with that exception of one long kick and a 18-yard return, have been pretty good. I think it's our return game that really hasn't, you know, we've scored on punt return early in the season, and then we had a kickoff return called back on a penalty. But outside of that, we really haven't done very much. That's where, in the kicking game, that's where the most improvement needs to come. And I think there's a lot of reasons why it's not there right now, but most of them are just border on, you know, do what you're supposed to do, you know, the way you're supposed to do it, and things work out pretty well. And all that being said, you know, you go back and look at this ball game, and I know it's, you know, for our players, it's hard to believe, and I really shouldn't harp on it, but I'm trying to allow them to understand, you know, just how close they really are. I mean, you look at the ball game, you say, I mean, it's a bad team, and you're not close at all. You know, who are you kidding? But you think about, you know, that those 3rd and 4th down plays that we didn't get the 1st and 10. You know, had we gotten the 1st and 10, we would have probably eaten up the clock, you know, for the rest of it. So at worst, we go in down 7. I mean, that's 2 touchdowns. You know, we drop a touchdown pass, that's 3. We end up with a fumble, that gives them 20-yard field, to score, which is 4. And I don't know, there's a couple more in there that are just things that we have total control over. It's not somebody beating you because they're just much better than you are. It's us doing things incorrectly that we are more than capable of doing the right way. And to me, that's how close we really are. And but what really counts is whether we do it or not. And I can talk all day about this could have been and this could have been, but the point is we've got to do it. And big thing will be today. As I said, last week we didn't practice well on Tuesday and Wednesday, and showed up on game day, and today's a chance to rectify that. To get the week off the right start.
You come into every season and you say it's a new year, new team, even with personnel returning.
Yeah.
But you also probably realize that there's some knowns and unknowns about your team that is returning. The biggest known on this team is the offensive line. How surprised are you that you're not more effectively protecting and running the ball with that line?
Well, I'm saying that it. First and foremost, it's not all offensive line. I mean, there are a lot of things going into whether we're effective moving the ball or not, and all of it is not those 5 guys up in front. They have a hand in it, most certainly. I mean, it falls on all of us. I mean, it's a collective thing. But certainly your expectations would be elevated a great deal because of having all the returning guys back up front, and the capacity to play together, to understand each other, etc. But we haven't played to the capabilities that we have. I think they're. I thought one of the highlights of the practice yesterday was our offensive line. And the fact that there was some spirit about them. There was a communication that I hadn't seen during the course of this season so far, football communication between each of our offensive linemen in regards to being able to pick up movements and stunts and all that goes along with it, and how they interacted before and after each snap of the practice. To try to help each other out. So I was pleased with the way they approached the practice anyway. They realize they have to get better as well. They understand that.
I want to ask about the fullback real quick, because you mentioned that that's one of the few positions, at least offensively, where there was not a lot of returning experience. Do you think would there be much difference in the offense if you had a guy who's experienced as Winston used to be, or is that not really that big of an issue in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I think there are times when you can say we could do this better and that better at that position and would have an impact. But at the end of the day, you don't see a great deal of difference, a dramatic amount of difference. There is some, but it's pretty limited right now, I think. We can still we've got to get better there. There isn't any doubt about that. But, just in making a comparison between the 2 years, we haven't done anything that, is substantially different or been impacted by that position.
How would you assess how they played through the first 4 games, Harden and Mason?
The fullback players. Not as good as they're capable of, but then again, what you have to realize is, they're learning as they go. And I will say this, they have made improvements, so their improvement has been consistent, or at least more consistent maybe than some other positions.
It seemed like Jordan Minnie was in the right place at the right time a few times against West Virginia. I guess, what have you seen that's allowed him to be in those spots, and what do you like about his play so far?
Well, I think he's a smart player. He's not just one of those guys that lines up and says, it's me against you, and I'm going to knock you around. And and all. I mean, you have to have that element of it, but you know, he's a young guy that you know, understands you know, a good deal about, you know, what defensive or what offensive tendencies exist, and how to play against certain guys that he lines up against, what to expect out of them, how to react to it. I think he's a young guy that processes information pretty well before the snap, you know, so that he can read and react, you know, quicker than perhaps than others. So, smart player.
You've got two of your former players going into the Hall of Fame, and wondered if you could maybe just share some of your thoughts about those two guys.
Well, you know, I hope they, you know, both are able to make it. It's you know, that it's a special honor, and you know, anytime we can get young guys that have been in our program recognized and in that way, I think is pretty special. You know, they're guys that you know, still follow the program, still have an emotional investment in the program. Guys that you know, want to see good things, you know, happen and continue to happen, and they're always there for you. You know, if you need them. Very deserving of the awards, quite obviously. Good young men.
Fully understanding that the offensive line is far from the only problem, have there been any discussions about personnel changes, including Dalton playing different spots since he's so capable of doing so, or are you pretty happy is the wrong word, but content to go with the 5 guys right now?
Well, right now, it's, you know, it all boils down to who plays the best and who practices the best. And right now, I'm very confident in Coach Dickey and the fact that we've got the 5 best guys that we have on the field right now, and that hasn't changed. You know, the others still have the opportunity to, you know, keep getting better and make improvement. And if indeed they do, then they'll have an opportunity to compete for those positions as well. You know, we've dabbled around at the right guard position a little bit with Rivas, but you know, at the end of the day, Beecham grades out better, and so he's on the field. Need for him to get better, but by the same token, he's you know, still he's progressing. He's progressing in that manner. So, yeah.
Coach, since 2000, K-State's only been outside of the top 100 nationally in rushing yards one time. That was the 2014 season, and I know the season's only 4 games old, but right now you sit at number 92 in the country, kind of flirting with that outside of the top 100. What do you maybe think is the issues there? I mean, is it because the offensive line isn't getting a good enough push, or the running backs kind of not running the way that they usually do? What do you think the issues are there?
Well, I think it's an accumulation of a variety of different things, you know, and for me to say, you know, our offensive lineman is not blocking people, or to say our running back's not running hard enough or finding holes, etc., you know, there can be some fact and truth to that. I think, as I said, I think everybody shares in the fact that we have been A, unsuccessful collectively, and B, offensively, you know, have not been as effective as we need to be. And it, you know, again, it starts with me and you know, all of our staff, all of our, you know, 11 guys on the field. There's nobody playing perfect. So, I mean, everything needs to be, you know, as it is, everything is addressed, you know, weekly. We just need to improve on everything. You know, you go back and, you know, if you're talking about, you know, last year or any other year, you know, where we, you know, finished strongly, you know, that's not by accident. That's because, you know, everybody got better. I mean, it's not as though, you know, everybody laid down in front of us in the last 8 games or whatever the case may be. It's just that our football team became better collectively during that period of time, and that's what we're working on right now. It's just we've got to become a better football team than we are. We have the capabilities of being a better football team than we are, but it's a matter of, you know, doing it.
When you look at the film of Texas, what really stands out about them?
Well, I think they're a very fine defensive football team. They have the capacity to do an awful lot of things, very much like West Virginia. There will be some carryover value from West Virginia, but they have a lot of movement. They're an odd front team, and like I said, you'll see a lot of movement, a lot of blitzes. Saw a lot of it last year. Offensively, as I said, I think the quarterback does a nice job. He's a threat because he can do a lot of different things. I think they're a team that, from an offensive standpoint, that they've got some running backs that run extremely hard. I mean, they've got good quickness to them. They're talented young guys, but I'm impressed by how physical they are, and they run the ball downhill, at you. If you let them do that, and they're physical enough to do it. I think, and again, they've played, some very good football teams, and TCU is a good football team. I'd like to believe USC is a good football team, normally are. I see their secondary players running, stride for stride with USC's wide receivers, and I can't believe USC's wide receivers are without speed. I can't remember that ever happening. So that would tell me that they've got the ability to run, have quickness, and good athletes as well. So they're a good football team.
Following up on that, how much improvement have you seen from them from year 1 to year 2 under Herman, and is there anything that really stands out about, wow, they just look so much better compared to when we faced them last year?
Well, it's an interesting question because, they obviously are a better football team. You see an awful lot of the same players, not collectively across the board, more returning starters on defense than there are on offense, but nevertheless, I don't see a significant difference. I know they're better. Tom would know, exactly why. It may be attitude, maybe approach, and I think he probably attributes to that to the improvement that they have made. But as you watch them physically on the field, I thought they were, good last year, and the results are better this year, but they, appear to be, very similar, good football team.